The Atlanta Braves have lost shortstop Ha-Seong Kim until probably the All-Star break with a torn tendon in his finger. What's it going to take to get a break, man? Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your source for daily news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster, also the author of almost everything over at BravesToday.com, your daily Atlanta Braves newsletter. We're probably part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started on how some of the odds for 2026 have already started to change, because the Braves announced on Sunday afternoon that shortstop Ha-Seong Kim underwent surgery on Sunday for a torn tendon in his right middle finger. Reportedly, he slipped and fell on some ice while back home in Korea, and the Braves have given him an expected recovery time of 4 to 5 months. Let's talk about where the Braves go from here. Let's talk about what we know and your different options, whether it's a trade, whether it's free agency, and all that stuff. But first, the immediate impact of losing Ha-Seong Kim is he's going to, now you are in a situation where Mauricio Dubon is your starting shortstop. You have to play Dubon, as of now, every day as the starting shortstop, simply because that's the only other option you have on the roster. Like, the way that this whole thing broke down is you traded Nick Allen to get Dubon. And then after you signed Ha-Seong Kim, in different moves, you designated both Verdell Brujan and Brett Wisely for assignment. Brujan, along with Ken Waldichuk, was claimed by the Rays. Atlanta traded them over for cash considerations. The Twins claimed Verdell Brujan off of waivers. And so the Braves, right now, your options on the 40-man roster for shortstop, Mauricio Dubon, and then after that, it's a bunch of guys who not even a bunch of guys, it's a couple guys who you don't know if they can actually play shortstop or not, right? Do they, like Nacho Alvarez? He played a bunch of shortstop in the minors. Atlanta specifically did not give him shortstop run in spring training. They did not give him shortstop run in the minors. They were actually going to play him at second base when he was activated from his preseason wrist injury until Austin Riley went down. I've been told by people the Braves do not view Nacho Alvarez as a shortstop. And let's be clear, I know 4 to 5 months sounds like we could be looking at a shorter time frame than what I'm given to the All-Star break. 4 months is mid-May. 5 months is mid-June. You have to understand the way the Braves do this, though. When they talk about expected recovery time, they don't typically give a time frame for that guy to be back in the majors playing on an everyday basis. They say an expected recovery time, and that is typically until the guy is medically cleared to do baseball stuff, right? To do a rehab assignment and all of that stuff. So I know in the short yesterday, in the show, in the intro just now, I said the All-Star break. If you look at the midpoint of the 4 to 5 months and you say 4.5 months, then assuming no setbacks, he's medically cleared to resume baseball activities in June. And by the time he does these baseball activities and then he goes on a rehab assignment, you're realistically looking at July 1st, somewhere around the All-Star break. And again, that's assuming no setbacks in the rehab process. And for evidence that Atlanta is optimistic on these things, look at when they reported about Sean Murphy last fall. What'd they say? They said he should be available for the start of spring training. And at the time, I was like, hey, I talked to a hip expert. That seems a little aggressive. I feel like he's going to miss time in the regular season, and lo and behold, a couple weeks ago, Alex Anthopoulos admitted that Sean Murphy would miss the start of the regular season. He'd miss opening day. So when they say Ha-Seong Kim's recovery time is 4 to 5 months, It's not 4 to 5 months to get back on the field in the lineup every day. It's 4 to 5 months to resume baseball activities. And then he needs to have the ramp up to get ready to play every day. He has to face pitching. He has to do defensive drills. He has to play in multiple games. They have to see how he responds to all of those progressive steps of activating. So realistically, Mauricio Dubon is your starter at shortstop as of right now, probably close to the All-Star break, right? The first 55% of the season. And so the question's going to be, how do you supplement the roster? Because right now, you're looking at Sean Murphy as one of your bench pieces, assuming he's ready for opening day. And if he's not, which again, I've been saying since September he would not be, you're probably looking at a Sandy Leone or a Chadwick Trump on the opening day roster as the backup to Drake Baldwin. You're looking at Eli White on the bench as another outfielder, right? A fifth outfielder. And then, as of right now, it's Nacho Alvarez and non-roster invitee Aaron Schunk, former top prospect of the Rockies. That's your best options right now for half of your bench. They do have some guys in the minors that have played shortstop before. Cal Conley, Luke Waddell, both in AAA. Jim Jarvis, I talked about him a week or two ago when all the Wisely Bruhan stuff was happening. You know, maybe a guy like that makes the majors, but they're going to have to go out and get somebody. And I think either way, no matter if it's via trade or free agency, and we'll break down both of those options today, but whether it's trade or free agency, one of the other things I think Atlanta needs to do is they need to work on the defensive versatility stuff for Eli White. We saw back in 2024, they had him play a little bit of second base. He only got like 3 innings, right? He completed both of his defensive chances. And then he played a little bit of first base, relieving Matt Olson last year. He got a total of 9 innings across 4 games at first base. Didn't commit an error either time, but again, very small sample size. In spring training, the last couple seasons, I've seen this like with my own eyes from the press box in Northport. They've let him play second base. They've let him play shortstop. They've tried to see if they think he's capable of being an actual utility man and playing more than just the outfield. I do think that this is the time, the rest of the offseason, that you probably need to be on the phone with Eli White today and say, hey, we need you, pack your infielder glove to spring training. We need you working on the drills at short, at second. Not necessarily planning on starting Eli White, but right now, Nacho Alvarez, I guess, is your highest level backup to Mauricio Dubon. I mean, he is the only guy who has experience playing shortstop. And even then, he's not done it in the majors. Nacho Alvarez has 187 games of shortstop in the minors. In the majors, he's only ever played third base and second base. And so right now, Dubon is stretched into an everyday role at shortstop, and behind him, you've got Eli White, who was a college shortstop that moved to the outfield. You've got Nacho Alvarez, who was a college third baseman that we tried to move to short. It didn't work out, and we moved him back to third base and second base. You got to go get somebody. I do also have concern about counting on Mauricio Dubon. A lot of people have kind of overlooked some of the drop in offensive performance from Dubon because they're thinking about the platoon situation for Dubon. The last 2 seasons in Houston, he has a combined 83 OPS plus. He went from a 97 OPS plus in 2023 to an 87 to a 78 last year. And all 3 seasons he played around 130 or so games. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a fatigue thing. It may have just been that first year in Houston, he was really good in a year where everybody's offense felt like it was inflated, and then he's kind of come back to earth. We don't have any guarantee that if he goes into an everyday shortstop position, which is the most demanding offensive position, or the most demanding infield position, we don't have any guarantee his offense won't continue to slip. So Atlanta needs to find options at shortstop. They can plan on Dubon being the starter, but it was clear this offseason that while they were confident in that if it came down to it, that wasn't their primary plan because they were engaging in trades. They ended up signing Kim. They paid $20 million to Ha-Seong Kim so that they didn't need to have Mauricio Dubon be the starter every day at shortstop. So we're going to talk about shortstop options, right? Is it a free agent signing? Is it a trade? Both, whatever. Real quick, something I've seen a little bit on social media already, and in responses to the short I posted yesterday, the Braves don't have the option to not pay Ha-Seong Kim. Just because it was a non-baseball injury in the offseason, that's not grounds for them to get out of the contract. A lot of those deals do have clauses, a lot of athlete contracts do have clauses for injuries outside of the season, but it's typically due to dangerous activities, right? You were, riding a four-wheeler, you were skydiving or something and you got hurt. Things like walking down the street and slipping on ice and falling are typically not covered in those clauses. And also, we don't have any confirmation of this. I'm willing to bet you Atlanta didn't have insurance. It's a one-year deal. Who would get insurance on a one-year contract? So Atlanta's going to have to pay Ha-Seong Kim $20 million. And they'll be lucky to have him, I think at best, half the season. But again, you're going to look at some other options. Let's talk about trades. Let's talk about free agents. We'll do both of those next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We have already seen a little bit of movement in the lines. National League winner, Dodgers are clearly the favorite. We know that. Phillies are 2 at plus 700. Braves are at plus 750, followed by the Mets at plus 800. Atlanta's odds ticked back just a little bit after the Kim news because, again, you're missing your starting shortstop for half the year. Their odds of winning the division, they're still second best odds to win the division at plus 175. And when you behind Philly, even though Philly's not gotten better, they're paying more money for the same guys, and they've not really improved the team, but, whatever. Atlanta still has the 5th best odds of winning the World Series, 6th best odds, I can't count. 6th best odds at plus 1,500 behind only the Blue Jays, the Phillies, the Mariners, for some reason, the Yankees, again, for some reason, and the Dodgers. So if you want to check out all of this stuff, the divisions, the win totals, if you think Atlanta's win total is now too high, they have Atlanta right now at 89.5. If you think that that's a little too high or too low or whatever, go check it out, FanDuel.com, or download the FanDuel app today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby. I hate to be the bearer of bad news on this. There's not a lot of options at shortstop in free agency, and we've been saying that all winter, but guess what? It is worse now than it was because you have already lost Bo Bichette. Again, I don't think Atlanta was going to pop a qualifying offer and give Bo Bichette the contract that he ended up getting from the New York Mets. I love that New York Mets are going to ask him to just play third base, a position he's literally never played before. Seems like it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out that well. 3 years, $126 million, $42 million a year. There's no way Atlanta was ever going to do that. That's just, come on. They were not going to do that at all. Can you imagine if Bichette opts out after 1 year? They popped a qualifying offer for him to leave after 1 year. Wild. Anyway, so your free agents right now at shortstop, I'm going off of what SpotTrack has listed as guys who are available. You have to remember, Willie Castro signed with the Royals recently. He's not great defensively, but he's played plenty of shortstop. He signed with the Royals for 2 years. The Rockies for 2 years and just shy of $13 million. Miguel Rojas went back to the Dodgers. Ahmed Rosario went back to the Yankees. Neither one of those guys are very exciting, but they've played it. Your options now at shortstop are Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Jorge Mateo, and a bunch of guys who are utility profiles who have not really played shortstop in a while. So Isaiah Kiner-Falefa he was just making $7.5 million a year on a deal he had signed with the Blue Jays. He was traded to the Pirates. They waived him like a month later. And then Toronto grabbed him back off of waivers, and he stuck with them all the way through through the World Series run. You remember he was on third base in Game 7 and just missed scoring the winning run for Toronto because he was way too close to the base. Anyway, he was on a 2-year, $15 million deal. He's just 30 years old. He turns 31 in March. I know we keep thinking about Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and I say we, I mean me, really, as this old veteran. He's 30. He's not actually that old. It's just he's played in the league 8 different years now. But last season, he hit a combined .262 between the Pirates and the Blue Jays with a 76 OPS plus. In 2024, he hit .269 with a 92 OPS plus, and that was the second highest mark of his career. His best was in 2020, the shortened season. He put up a 93 OPS plus. So at his best, he's been 8 to 10% worse than league average. But what Isaiah Kiner-Falefa does do for you, if Atlanta ends up going with this, is he has 434 starts in the major leagues at shortstop. And also, people kind of forget this. He used to be a catcher. He's played some center field, he's played some outfield, but he used to be a catcher. He's played 73 games behind the plate in his major league career. So if you want a guy that offensively is not much better than Nick Allen, but he doesn't strike out a ton, he puts the ball in play a bunch, he just doesn't always get a lot of hits off of it, and he's not great defensively, but he can play shortstop arguably well enough where he gives you an option at short if you need one on a shorter term thing, and gives you the ability in an emergency to strap up behind the plate. If you need an emergency catcher, you can do worse than IKF. Again, he was on a 2-year, $15 million deal. I don't know how much he'll cost. I would assume $5.5 million is probably what he would take to sign. I don't know how insistent he would be on a second year so that he's not re-entering free agency during a lockout. But IKF is a very uninspiring but a passable option that would give you the ability. He could, in essence, take over Mauricio Dubon's utility role that we had planned, while Dubon's your everyday shortstop, with the added bonus of IKF theoretically could get you through the rest of a game as an emergency catcher. If you truly are going to DH Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy on days they're not behind the plate, more so Baldwin than Murphy, you can do worse than IKF as an emergency option to finish a game for you. It's there. I'm not saying that's the reason to sign him, but it's something to think about. If you really want to use the catchers as much as you've talked about for pinch hitters, for DH and all of that stuff, having a third guy on the bench without having to carry a third catcher would be useful. The other option, and somebody that I've talked about before, he is somehow probably a lower ceiling offensively than IKF is Jorge Mateo, former longtime Baltimore Oriole. Started off with the Padres, moved from the Padres to Baltimore back in, I think it was like 2021. Trying to remember who he was. He's been traded a couple times in his career. Oh, no, he was selected off of waivers. That's right. He's been traded a few times in his career and was selected off of waivers by Baltimore in 2021. Was their starting shortstop for a little while until Gunnar Henderson was ready. And then just recently, he's been a pretty all-around, do-everything guy. He's offensively, he's a career 221 hitter, right? Career 77 OPS. So he's fallen off the face of the earth in that regard, as far as he's never really been a great hitter. 2021, he did have a 32-game stretch where he hit 280. I feel like anybody in baseball can hit 280 for 32 games. Michael Harris did it last year in that terrible year that he had. But Jorge Mateo would give you the ability to cover shortstop, as well as he's played all three outfield positions, including center field. He's played second and third. He's another utility option who has the advantage over IKF and even Dubon and a lot of other guys about being incredibly fast. Jorge Mateo, when he's been healthy, he has had some health issues. When he's been healthy, he's one of the fastest players in baseball. Last year, playing through injuries, he only got 83 plate appearances in the majors, still had a 94th percentile sprint speed of 29.3 feet per second. In 2024, when he got 200 and something plate appearances, he was around more and just wasn't being used. 99th percentile in sprint speed at 29.9 feet per second. 2023, it was 30.1 feet per second. He also was 95th percentile in base running run value. He's legitimately one of the fastest players in baseball, and he is a very good base runner when he, can find a way to get on base enough to actually use that skill. And when he was fully healthy and playing shortstop, which I believe 2022 was the last year that he played shortstop on an everyday basis, plus 10 outs above average, his fielding run value was a 95th percentile plus 11. So he's also been a very good defender at shortstop. In essence, he's Nick Allen if Nick Allen was actually fast. Again, I love Nick Allen, no Nick Allen slander, but he is what you wanted Nick Allen to be from if you're not going to hit, do everything else well. Jorge Mateo does everything else well, but he runs the bases really well. He's fast. He would give you a pinch hit option. He would give you a guy who could provide coverage in the outfield, defensive replacement. If Dubon's at short on an everyday basis and you had to cover center field for an inning, you could throw Jorge Mateo out there. Again, you can throw Mike Yastrzemski out there. So a couple options when it comes to free agent signings to go on your bench as your primary utility man now that your primary utility man is moving to the starter at shortstop in Mauricio Dubon. There are a couple trade candidates, and some of the names we've discussed, some of the names we haven't. Let's talk about the pros and cons of all of these guys and where Atlanta might go to make a move. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby, I'm laughing so I don't cry. Really, I don't know what Atlanta's done to the baseball gods. I don't know, why both the baseball gods and Mother Nature are mad at us, but we keep losing players, and the latest one is Ha-Seong Kim. What's really frustrating is I was in the middle of writing a newsletter for Monday about what had to go right for the Braves in 2026 to get back to the playoffs. And very clearly and obviously, stay healthy was number one. And I was going to go a little bit deeper. It wasn't just going to be you had to be healthy. I think there was legitimate problems with the roster and the hitters and things you had to fix. But number one was stay healthy. And in the middle of writing that newsletter, news broke that, hey, the Braves aren't staying healthy. So scrap that. We're doing something different. When it comes to trades, I'm trying to figure out the direction you go here. And the first place that everybody went to on trades was Nico Hoerner. I get it, right? Nico Hoerner has been a very good starting shortstop in Major League Baseball before. And I get the Nico Hoerner thing. All indications from Chicago are that they're not prepared to trade Nico Hoerner. That they want to keep Nico Hoerner for his final year of team control, let him contend. They plan to use Matt Shaw in the outfield, and then to cover an injury at third or second. And then Matt Shaw's tabbed to be their starter at second base after Nico leaves, if he leaves in free agency. Maybe it's worth calling the Diamondbacks again about Jordan Lawler. They're going to use him in the outfield. They have Arenado. Obviously, they have Ketel Marte. They have Perdomo. They're not going to use him in the infield at all. So maybe that's something where they're willing to make a move for Jordan Lawler. More of a speculative future kind of thing, but he would give you an option who has played shortstop plenty, played it enough to defensively cover for you and you feel okay with it. I do think, the usual trade suspects that you need to check on, Jeremy Pena, Zach Neto, Ezequiel Tovar, all could be available for different reasons. Pena declined the extension offer from Houston and then hired Scott Boras. So I believe his final year of team control is 2027, and then Jeremy Pena will be a free agent, and by all likelihood is not going to re-sign with Houston. Maybe they're willing, if you give them enough, maybe they're willing to go ahead and move him now versus pulling a Kyle Tucker and waiting until his final year. They go ahead and move him this offseason for a giant package, and you have a starter at shortstop for 2 seasons. So Jeremy Pena. Ezequiel Tovar is probably less likely because there's now a new regime in Colorado, but that's the reason you have to check this out, right? That's the reason you have to investigate this, because he signed that deal. It looked really promising, and then he got worse in 2025. Now, the word is that's injury related. How much does the new front office think that is injury related versus it being just he wasn't as good as he looked in 2024 when he got down ballot MVP votes and hit a gold glove, and won a gold glove with a 100 OPS plus and leading the National League in doubles. I don't think they move Ezequiel Tovar, just like I don't think the Angels move Zach Neto, but I do think you have to call and check on both of those guys. Tovar is signed through the age of 29, which is 2031. That's a team option year at $23 million. His guaranteed money runs out after 2030. It escalates all the way up to $16 million a year by 2030. If Colorado wants to drop some money, that's a place they may be willing to do it. I have another idea for a potential trade if we end up doing a trade here. And I want to talk to you about the idea of acquiring Brendan Donovan. It came up early in the offseason, right? They have not moved him yet, like they moved Arenado, like they moved Gray, like they moved Contreras. But if you look at the return on all of those deals, they were getting pitching back in all of those deals, right? I think a couple catchers maybe in those as well, but for the most part, pitching was the major return there. So I do think there is an opening to reach out to St. Louis about Brendan Donovan. And in essence, what you're doing here, he's never been a full-time shortstop. When he has played shortstop, he's not been a negative at shortstop. He doesn't have a ton of shortstop time, but he's graded out usually neutral or so. I don't think Brendan Donovan is an everyday starting shortstop, even in 2026. But when you talk about being able to put guys into position to be successful, Mauricio Dubon, we kind of talked about this. He's been much better in his career against lefties than righties. 602 OPS against righties, 748 against lefties. And the idea was with Kim as your everyday shortstop, Dubon could platoon with Yastrzemski in the outfield because Yastrzemski's been really good against righties and really bad against lefties, and they made a natural platoon. Guess what? Brendan Donovan in his career has an 812 OPS against righties and a 651 against lefties. So if you were to acquire Brendan Donovan, and again, I'm not saying it's likely, but you would have 2 years of team control, 26 and 27. It would give you the ability to, depending on the handedness of the starter, you're facing a righty, you could play Donovan at short. If you're facing a lefty, you could play Dubon at short. In the Donovan games, once that starter comes out, you can do a defensive swap. You could put Dubon in, or you could wait till the late innings. You could move Donovan to second, put Dubon at short, and take Ozzie out. Because Ozzie defensively is a negative right now. He is not a positive defender at second base. Having Donovan for 2 seasons would also give you a little bit of insurance if Ozzie does not return to the form that we think he should after the injuries. And maybe you do more than one of these. Maybe you go out and you get Donovan. You're probably going to have to give up a pitching prospect. It's probably going to be J.R. Ritchie. Simply because if you look at the fact that the Cardinals have gotten a bunch of pitching back in all of those deals, but they haven't traded Donovan, which means either they want to keep him or they haven't gotten a deal good enough. So in both situations, you probably need, or you probably will end up having to give your best pitching prospect to get him. And that's kind of semantics. Waldrop is not a prospect, technically. He went over by 1 start last year. But J.R. Ritchie, the good news would be you would have 2 years of control of Donovan. If he works out well enough to man shortstop at least part of the time, it would give you a little bit of flexibility after this season. Maybe this whole thing results in being able to keep Ha-Seong Kim. We'll see. He'll talk about that later. I know right now nobody wants to think about giving him more money to not play for the Braves, but this does come into consideration. But it would also give you an option if you do have a shortstop, whether one of the prospects is ready, an Alex Lodis or something, whether you sign somebody else, you trade for Pena, whatever, next offseason, you can stick Donovan at second. It gives you insurance if Ozzy's bat just never comes back. And you end up not picking up the club option on Ozzy Albies for 2027. So lots of different directions this can go. But I think what's clear, the big takeaway from Sunday's announcement by the Braves of Kim being out for what I think they're giving you too short of a time frame. I do think it's going to take longer than what they are saying. I don't think it's going to be 4 to 5 months. And again, typically, when Atlanta talks about expected recovery time, they mean medically cleared by the staff to do baseball stuff again. They don't mean playing every day as soon as that 4 to 5 months is up. Again, I still think it's probably closer to the All-Star break before you get him back. But you've got options. None of them are great. None of them are great, barring an acquisition of Zach Neto or Ezekiel Tovar or Jeremy Pena. Barring that, none of them are great options. But you also need to go out and do something. You got to sign an IKF or a Jorge Mateo. You got to trade for somebody. You got to do multiple of those. Somebody in the Braves Today Discord, which if you want to join, links in the episode description and the show notes, it's completely free. Somebody in the Braves Today Discord suggested maybe you go back to the Brewers and you up your offer for Freddie Peralta. But when you do that, you also ask for one of their additional infielders so that you have somebody to play shortstop. Maybe you try to get Caleb Durbin back. Maybe you ask for Joey Ortiz. But you try to get one of those shortstops. Those guys. Getting Ortiz, they'd be selling low on Ortiz. He put up 1.4 WAR last year with a 593 OPS. They'd probably be selling high on Durbin. It's a question of whether or not they believe in what Durbin did. He had a 721 OPS and struck out less than 10% of the time last year. Didn't hit for a ton of power, but was a positive hitter, a 105 WRC+. So which one they give you probably depends on how they feel about those guys. If they feel like Durbin was not as good as the numbers, they offer you him. If they feel like Ortiz has come back down to earth and this is who he is, they offer you him. But maybe you go back and you say, we still want Freddie Peralta, but we need an infielder with him. We need a Richie. We're going to give you J.R. Richie and another prominent piece, and we need Joey Ortiz or Caleb Durbin back in the deal. Maybe that's what happens. Who knows? Either way, offseason just got a little more frustrating. They made it 18 days into 2026 before a massive injury hit. So let's see what they do. Season's obviously not over, but you can't just coast into spring training now. You got more work to do. As the week progresses, we'll break down whatever they end up doing and talk about how reliable this is, whatever plan they choose, and what options they had. This has been Braves Today for Monday, January 19th. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Also, bravestoday.com. That is the daily newsletter. You can subscribe there, free or paid. Helps us out a ton with what we're trying to do. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.